Greetings to everyone. Welcome to Vino Veritas, brought to you by the Napa Institute. We're coming to you from our DC offices. I'm your host, Mark Rolina, Napa's president. We recently launched this Apostolate Spotlight series, through which we hope to let you know about some of the amazing work going on in the church. At Napa Institute, we have this great vantage point, where we get to see so many incredible groups taking on different facets of building up the body of Christ. And of course, we have a great affinity for lay apostolates. The work of apostolates includes all the activity of the mystical body of Christ, directed towards spreading his kingdom throughout the earth. It is labor designed to lead people into deeper relationship with Jesus Christ and toward their redemption. Countless American Catholics have answered this call, working through at least 4,100 lay apostolates. The real number is likely much higher, with new organizations and initiatives launching all the time. And we are excited to bring you a closer glimpse of one of the great newer apostolates, the Leonine Forum. We're blessed to be joined today by Mitch Boersma, the executive director of Leonine. He's the visionary behind the program and a good friend. We're very happy to have Mitch here with us in person in our DC office. Welcome, Mitch.
Thanks, Mark. Happy to be here.
So this podcast, we're really trying to highlight apostolates that are doing amazing work. And you kind of like to be behind the scenes to some extent. Some folks may not know your background. If you can maybe just give a sense about where you came from. You know, I've got some fellow Colorado connections and things like that, but kind of bring us up to the point where maybe Leonine got started.
Sure, yeah. So like you said, I'm from Colorado, born and raised in Littleton, still holding on to my 303 area code on my cell phone.
Right. Yeah.
Public school there, went to the University of Dallas, started out there at UD as a theology major. My mother called me every day, freshman year, asking what I was going to do with a theology degree. I was not sure. And then I got into my first Latin class the second semester and realized, you know what, I don't know really what I'm going to do with that theology degree after all. So switched over to the business side. So I was at UD through there doing the business program, but took every extra theology course I could through there, mostly on the moral theology side.
Okay.
And then thought I was going to go into business. And my senior year at UD, I took an internship at a place called, I think it was Richard's Partners. So it's a private PR firm. I think that was the name of it. Very hip, had staircases through the middle of the building. They did all the PR work for like Chick-fil-A and Zales, and so very kind of cool. And I remember very distinctly, I was interning backbench, looking out over this team, and they were trying to figure out how to get more press for their 5K walk. And everyone's super into it. I'm like, man, these people are really, really into this, and I am not. So I made another huge mistake here on the business side. Ended up from there taking an internship here at EPPC. It was my first job in DC.
Yeah.
I had been told when I was at UD it was a good way to think about what to do next with a liberal arts education, that a place like New York, the product is finance. A place like LA, the product is media and entertainment. And Washington, D.C., at its best, the product are ideas. And as a University of Dallas graduate, I was trained in the ability of ideas, so this think tank world was kind of opened up to me. Mm-hmm. So took an internship here at EPPC at the New Atlantis Journal.
Okay.
So working over there, I had no business as a theology guy over there, but worked with Adam Kuyper at the time and Yuval, who was here. Yeah. Went from there to a job at the American Enterprise Institute. Over at AEI, I was a research assistant for Michael Novak for multiple years over there. And then from there, went back to CUA. Went to CUA, got a master's degree in moral theology, thinking I was going to go on that path after all, and go do theology there. Got to the master's program there, realized in one of these seminars with a couple other folks doing a PhD that they were really good at this stuff and really wanted to take theology and be professors in the middle of Kansas, and that was not going to be for me.
Right.
So yeah. I think I made another huge mistake here, but Providence had its way, and the day I finished my master's comprehensive exams was the day that Father Arnie Panula, who was then the director of the Catholic Information Center, called me up and asked me to interview for a job there. Yeah. So that's when I ended up at the CIC.
That's really interesting. I mean, I know you're kind of shorthanding it in terms of talking about some of the things along the way as mistakes, but God doesn't a waste of brushstroke. It's just all the things that you've kind of done to this point, and watching how they're being utilized in your work at Leonine. It's, I don't know, fascinating to me. But yeah, so tell me, what Catholic Information Center, you're obviously still connected. Give me a little sense of that work that you're up to.
Yeah, again, it's all been very providential. And so, like you mentioned, I have kind of 2 day jobs. They're both born out of the Catholic Information Center. So I'm the executive vice president there at the CIC. The CIC is the closest tabernacle to the White House. It's over off 15th and K. And it's really a hub of intellectual and spiritual life in Washington, D.C. We talk about the way that CIC operates here, particularly in Washington, D.C., is to serve Catholic professionals working here in the city, working for our country, and people come into that space for one of a few reasons. They come in for an intellectual reason. We have a great bookstore selection. We have book launch events and other things going on there. They come in for a spiritual reason. We have Mass every day at noon and confession before and after Mass. Or they're coming in for one of those social or professional reasons, right? They want to come and either meet some other young professionals or established professionals in the area. They want to come to one of the events and just be a part of that Catholic scene in D.C. What we try to do is, after they come in for one of those reasons, to help people realize that they can live this integrated life of faith, that their faith life can be intersected with their professional life, with their intellectual life throughout the week and not just on Sundays. So my job there is to run the operations with a great team, and Father Charles Driels, who is the director there as well.
Yeah, that's great. And we'll talk a little bit more about this. We do have a quarterly series we do with you out of the Catholic Information Center, which I think is really awesome. We started calling those Napa Knights, but we'll save that for just a moment. I'm going to ask you a little bit about the gap that you saw when Leonine was coming into being, but maybe go into the more practical nuts and bolts. Where did the idea originate? Were you sitting on a beach somewhere and had an epiphany? What was sort of the start of the idea of Leonine?
Sure. So Leonine was started with Father Arnie Panula, who I mentioned was the previous director of the CIC, and myself. It started as a project of the CIC, and it really was born out of conversations that we were having and experiencing at the CIC with particularly the young professionals that were coming in the doors of the CIC every day. We were always meeting, and are still meeting, really bright, talented, engaged, serious professionals, serious about their faith, some of them daily communicants, but had never seen what the church had to offer in terms of Catholic social teaching, right? That the church has been thinking about these tough questions for 2,000 years, and these folks had never had a chance to study it, see it, and understand how it could impact their personal life and their professional life. And so there was an element of wanting to try to backfill some of that education. There was also an element where we were constantly meeting these really interesting folks and saying, well, you got to know this guy, and you guys are both at the same law firm, and you guys really hit it off, and always doing this kind of professional and social matchmaking. We said, gosh, this would be easier if you guys were all just in a room together once in a while. Right. And then also trying to build vertically the folks who are already in DC initially, integrating their faith into their professional life at the highest levels. And we wanted to create an opportunity for these rising young professionals in DC to be connected up with those folks at the highest levels in DC who were already, there at the CIC and connecting with us. So those were the 3 issues that we tried to address in forming the Leonine Forum.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. I remember, I think I was working at the Bishops' Conference around the time you were getting it started, and we'll talk a little bit about the formation and who you try to bring in to really supercharge these folks' vision for what God is asking them to do. But I wonder, you've been doing this for more than a decade, and we'll talk about some of the cities you've expanded to. But now looking at it, and maybe with a little bit of hindsight, what do you think this big gap is? What is the promise for Leonine and the people you're trying to reach for what they can do for the church and the world? Why is this something that needs to be addressed?
So yeah, after now doing this over the last decade, something that we've realized that we've hit on, that the Leonine Forum serves for the Catholic community around the country, is it's filling this role of being a formational network that at the best universities did and used to do, but we're seeing less and less in terms of the ability to both form people, mind, body, and soul, and to send them off into a community with that shared experience for Christ. And so this idea of Leonine being something that is formational in a very practical way, professionally, in an intellectual way, and a network of people committed to this common cause of living and leading virtuously is a more cohesive plan than we even realized we had at the beginning, but it's really blossomed into that.
Yeah, and you in particular, I think, as a leader of the organization, when I want to know who's doing something, I ask Mitch, who's in what space, what are they up to? And I just think that great fruit over a decade, plus, in conjunction with everything else you're up to, you're a good connector. And I think the program is that on steroids, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's just a phenomenal group of people now. There are 1,000 of these fellows around the country, and they're just a really top-notch group of people, and they give a lot of hope for all of us on the future.
Yeah. Well, so when you started Leonine, I guess talk about that first cohort, and what did the programming look like going down sort of through the years, and maybe how that's evolved. What are you putting in front of people? Who are you trying to get, as the voices they're hearing in their formation?
Sure, yeah. So the core of the program is the first year fellow experience, and that is 10 monthly sessions over the course of a year. At the beginning, it was basically just Father Arnie and I coming up with cool people to bring in front of this interesting group of fellows in that first class. But we have really formalized that curriculum over the last decade as this larger vision has come into play. And really what the curriculum is now is a series of truth claims about what it means to be and flourish as a human person. That's the proposition that we are giving to these fellows about what it means to flourish. And so the first half of the year, the sessions are based off of kind of basic philosophical, theological ideas. So we do a night on the human person is created to know. That's a night on faith and reason. The human person is made in the image of God. That's a night on Christian anthropology. A night on charity and truth, justice and mercy. A night on virtue ethics. A night on the human person as a citizen. And so those are kind of some of the core topics we do in the first half of the year, and then in the second half of the year they turn to topics where there's practical application into their professional or community life. So there's a night on the human person as a gift, on public bioethics. That's a really fascinating night that usually combines some elements of law, some elements of healthcare, some elements of theology and anthropology. So to bring these different sorts of professions together into a conversation like that. A night on the vocation of work, a night on religious liberty, poverty, immigration, interrural ecology, just to name a few of these modules that we've built out.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And I've run into alums everywhere. I'm talking to somebody who, actually, a well-formed person, maybe even before entering, and had no idea that they were a Leonine alum. So, I guess give me even just an anecdote or two about what you've seen in terms of people's sort of awakening to the full potential of the human person and what maybe their calls might be. It's got to be really fascinating to see someone sort of say, I get it, and now I'm going to change some aspect of my life to mirror what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, the network is filled with these great stories of folks, like you say. Some of them are already pretty lit up and have some sort of knowledge of this, but for folks to have the opportunity to be encouraged by their peers, to know that they're not alone in wanting to be both professionally excellent, but also integrate their faith into that professional side of their life, and then find ways to use it. There are fellows who are working in state offices on policy issues and poverty questions, and they've come to us and said it was my experience with Leonine that first emboldened me to then go out and try to apply Catholic social teaching in this very particular way to help solve the poverty issue in my city. So just to name one, but again, to find the ways that these fellows, when you put them in a room together, a lot of magic just happens from that.
Well, and I know just even from conversations that you have a very painstaking process in terms of deciding who's going to be in a particular cohort, number one. And number two, what you want to sort of have across the program in a given location so that the group gels well and does what it needs to do. Talk a little bit about that. And I know, you've told me in the past it's really hard to leave anybody on the outside looking in, so you wish you had slots for everybody if you could. But I guess what's that magic mix, and what are you trying to do year to year?
Yeah, so each cohort we bring in, we keep the cohorts intentionally small, usually between 30 to 40, and the idea there is that we want the group to be small and cohesive enough that they can build true relationships with each other and with us, and we can really know them. And so as a result of that, like you say, each year there are people that we're not able to bring into the forum just by the nature of the popularity of the program. It started here in DC, like I mentioned, and it was in 2017 that the Leonine Forum spun off to become a separate 501c3. And the idea there was, can we bring together people in these other cities with high concentrations of young professionals who are working in industries of influence in the culture? Can we bring them together in the same way we have in DC? So in DC, it's very law, policy, politics, nonprofit heavy in terms of the sorts of folks who are in the program, because that's what the core professional makeup of DC looks like. In New York, it's much more on finance, journalism, healthcare, business, corporate 500. In Chicago, it is a lot of finance, tech. In LA, obviously, a big part of it is the entertainment industry. But again, the idea in each of these cohorts that we bring in is we are looking to mirror the professional makeup of the city, and bring those rising leaders within that professional makeup of the city into the forum.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating. And so you've touched on that just by virtue of the answer to that question. What's sort of the vision in expanding, and why choose these particular cities? It seems like all of them are places of influence, and you talked about that critical concentration of young professionals and maybe some Catholic networks. Although I would say Leonine itself has become really an excellent network. Had an event the other night, just working with so many of the fellows who happen to be gathered there, and it's just the affinity they have for one another. It's an alumni network that we can talk more about, but it's seems to really keep people kind of bonded well after the program's done. So why these particular locations, and are you looking to continue to grow? What's your thought?
Yeah, you touched on that, because we really from the beginning have tried to think of the Leonine Forum not as a one and done thing. That we did not want this to be just an intellectual exercise for folks to come in, get something, and leave. We want it to be a part of a community that they are joining for a lifetime, and that they have this intensive first year experience, but that they can then spend the rest of their lives, the rest of their careers, building these relationships with each other, both in the city and now as we've grown across the country within their shared professional networks. And so we can bring together all of the fellows who work in the healthcare industry across all of the cities together for conversations to share the difficulties that they're having, to meet with speakers that from the industry together, but really to build those relationships out over the long term is really part of the larger vision of Leonine. And so it's guided both the cities that we've been in, it's guided the fact that we have not expanded over the last 4 or 5 years now, because we really wanted to make sure that the model worked. That in DC, we're kind of the weird ones in terms of this sort of networking, like hypercharged environment, right? But in New York and LA and Chicago, it wasn't necessarily that way. So we wanted to make sure that we could build this thick community in these other cities, that it could take root, that we could create the sort of programming and opportunities for the fellows to stay connected with us and with each other. And now that we've been at that for 4 years and know that we've got something that works, we're looking to begin to expand again to other areas around the country where we think we can have an impact. So Dallas and Denver are the next two that we're preparing for now, hoping to be launching those chapters here at the end of the year. And both of those are natural places for us. Dallas as the hub of a growing number of people from around the country, as you know, one of the fastest growing areas in the country, both from a population standpoint, but also from industry heading in that direction. And then also Denver has been the hub of Catholic evangelical life since JP2 was there for World Youth Day. And so it's a place that we very naturally have the opportunity to connect the Catholic professionals of the Leonine Forum with the professional Catholics that also make up some small portion of it as well.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And as you mentioned before, filling the gap in what used to just be, part of the social fabric. There were reasons why people were coming together, sticking together. Now, geography and the breakdown of society, it's really amazing to see when you give people an authentic community built on something real, that it really keeps people together.
Oh yeah, I mean, just
great.
like I said before, like the superpower of Leonine is just it's convening power.
Mm-hmm.
That when you get the right people in the right room under the right context, they really do amazing things. But they have to build those relationships in person, like in an increasingly digital world. Getting in the room together is what really makes a difference.
Yeah, and for the fellows that put themselves out there to be part of the program, it's not for the faint of heart. This is a real commitment. It's not just, hey, show up if you like. I think I've sort of done an endorsement or two for people who have been kind of going into the program. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, from the beginning, we really wanted to make this a commitment, especially for that first year. And we asked the fellows to, when they're accepted into the program, to commit to coming to all of those sessions in the first year, those first 10 sessions. Obviously, things happen. You go to a family wedding, you have an emergency happen, a business thing, a business trip comes up. But outside of those sorts of obligations, we ask them to put these 10 dates on their calendar a year in advance. They have a giant thick book of reading before each of the sessions, 60 to 80 pages of reading to do in advance to help guide the conversation. And we have found as the program has grown that the more and more we ask out of these fellows, the more interest we get, the more people want to do it. They are hungry for this sort of structure and content and this challenge. And so we've been encouraged by that from the beginning.
Yeah. Well, then, you go through this intensive program, you get this formation, you're working with other like-minded folks and step out. Now you're an alumni of the program. I guess, what have you started to do to try to keep those folks intentionally together, and maybe what are some ideas in the offing a little bit down the road here that you might be trying to build towards?
Sure, yeah. So now, like I said, now that there are these 1,000 fellows, we really do spend a lot of time trying to keep them engaged with each other. We now do a national summit every year. Just did our second one a couple of weeks ago, which is for the Leonine Fellows. This past year, we did over 80 events around the country for these fellows. So we're constantly trying to get them together in groups, big and small. Like I said, primarily regionally, but also now that we've hit this critical mass of fellows, we've started to be able to bring them together based off of their shared professions. So we can bring everyone together who's working in the education area, and we do quarterly meetings with them to have the opportunity to tackle a particular topic or meet with the session leader. We've got these professional affinity groups in business and in finance and in the military. And so, again, giving them the opportunity to connect with each other as often as we can, and as we continue to expand, also looking to expand those opportunities that happen both virtually and more in person.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know you've got local leadership in each place, but it's a lot going on for a very lean team.
Yes, it's a very lean team. But again, the opportunity to then bring these fellows, I should say, also in conversation with each other, but also we want to give them the opportunities as they're excelling in their careers to connect up with great organizations like the Napa Institute, to continue to build out their formation and the sort of people that they can connect with.
Yeah, that's a great segue. The partnership with Napa, we talked about what we do with CIC on a quarterly basis, but let's maybe go through that a little bit. The conference showcasing something that I feel very proud about in this first year of work with you all is really giving a little bit of a platform for some of the rising leaders to get in front of an audience maybe that would not see them on a regular basis. We've got amazing speakers. We always try to do that, but folks don't always know who's on the bench coming up. And so talk a little bit about that collaboration with us. And you help us with so much in our speakers here.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really great joy last year at the summer conference, and again at the fall conference. Like you said, to take this opportunity, there are many of the people that are fellows in the Leonine Forum are current and future attendees of the great programming that the Napa Institute does, and some of them are destined to be the sort of folks who will be on the stage.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, we wanted to take this opportunity, and you and I discussed this quite a bit, to try to showcase rising leaders in the church, to provide those reasons of hope for the attendees at these conferences, and again give them the opportunity to be exposed to a larger audience. So the opportunity at these conferences to take some of these Leonine fellows that we think have something to contribute at a very high level, the same high level of participation that Napa, wants out of all of their speakers, but to do so in a way that, again, may not be a name that anyone has heard of yet, or few people have, but we think that are the sorts of names that people are going to be very familiar with in the Catholic world in the coming years.
Yeah, and as you talked about all these different segments of society and business and law, and some that are destined to be the Catholic professionals, as you talk about. There's so many to choose from. It's really, just an impressive group, and makes me sort of feel like I wasn't doing what I should have been doing at their age. These folks are really dialed in and have great messages and polished. It's pretty impressive.
Oh yeah. I would not be getting into the Leonine Forum on my own credentials. This group is really phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah, that's that old saying where you're in a successful place when you wouldn't have been able to make the program, and I sort of feel that myself too. So yeah, and then Napa Knights, we've in addition to the conferences, we've tried to work on that DC and New York in particular, and John Paul II back in 1979. I just love this quote. I came across it just recently. He talked about really the Christians' role in some of these cities of great influence was to really give the city a soul.
Yeah,
and I just felt such a powerful connection to what we're trying to do there, where it's just bring the community there, support them in what they need to really be, people who want to not run away from the challenge. And it's easy for me to say, I live in the country, in Virginia, but these folks aren't afraid to be there. They want to go and have an impact. And I think rather than fleeing from a very challenging situation, let's see if we can empower people to really take the city in the direction it ought to go, which is a place that shows the love of Jesus Christ to everybody there. And so it's just great to see these folks come together. And just, again, I always sort of feel like, what was I doing at their age?
Right.
Where they're all over it. It's amazing.
Yeah, the CIC, one of the slug lines that it's used over the years is that the CIC is the soul of the city and the heart of the capital, right?
Yeah.
So just like you're talking about with that quote of JP2, to really be there right in the heart of activity, trying to evangelize really from the center out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's good. I think for the most part, we're not doing anything extraordinary like anything else. It's a speaker and a chance for people just to get to know one another and have fraternity. But, I think these will be the folks that, hopefully say, how can we make the city more humane in the years ahead? And, in DC, it's particularly challenging all the time,
Sure.
But you get a lot of rancor and things. It's beautiful to see folks sort of saying, we're not going to give up on those projects.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
I'm grateful for that partnership. Maybe let's talk about just something that's maybe a little more theoretical at this point, but just, it's interesting. As you say, for the most part, the people in your cohorts aren't already professional Catholics. So what about the program do you think lends itself to maybe, and even the connections that happen with the speakers and people who come in, maybe could awaken some of them to a call to serve the church? Maybe it's as board members, maybe it's within their parish, but I think some of them, get dialed in and start their own apostolates and try to do some good things. And Napa trying to be an apostolate to apostolates, particularly interested in this. Where do you see that sort of hitting and connecting? Are there some Leonine fellows who say, okay, now I'm giving my whole self to building up the kingdom?
Yeah. We say, as we are looking through the class, the cohort in each year, that we are primarily looking for, like I've said a couple times now, Catholic professionals, not professional Catholics.
Mm-hmm.
Like you and I are kind of professional Catholics. Father is really a professional Catholic. But these folks that are in the program are really looking to find ways to bring their faith into their professional life.
Mm-hmm.
But like you say, as a result of going through this program, many of them are looking for those opportunities to then go out and figure out other ways that they can serve the church, ways they can serve their communities. These are young folks who are joining the boards of junior Catholic charities and going out and supporting apostolates. We've had different nonprofits that have been formed, like you say, from fellows who came together, had an idea, and have gone off and started their own projects. So again, when we are selecting fellows in, we're trying to screen for folks who are not just looking for something to add to their resume,
Right.
but have a history of service, have a history of putting into things as much as they're trying to get out of it. And then we know that when we get them together, those types of people really are looking for the opportunities to serve.
Yeah. Well, it's great. I mean, I think we've covered a lot. It's, to me, it's an amazing program, Mitch, and I'm grateful that you do it as one of your many hats that you wear. But just kind of in a parting thought, would you hope for if we're looking 10 years down the road? What would you hope to see alumni doing? From maybe those early classes. Where would you hope the program is in terms of what it's helping to do for the church and people who are going through it, maybe impacted by those who are in it?
Yeah. We've been on a very steady growth phase now for 10 years, like you say, but we're kind of hitting that hockey stick chart in terms of our expansion, where it took us 10 years to get to 1,000 fellows, but we'll double to 2,000 fellows in the next 4 years.
Wow.
And so just to see the size of this network grow, the challenge for us will be, can we keep those sorts of relationships and deep bond with the fellows as we grow at this pace? So over the next 10 years, we are really challenging ourselves to build out the sort of infrastructure that allows them to be connected with each other, to understand who they are, what they're doing, how they can help each other, and also how we can continue to serve them. So hopefully we'll be in a couple more cities. Hopefully we'll continue to find ways for them to deepen their connection with their faith into their professional life, and as they are taking on positions of real leadership. And we've seen that already now that we're 10 years into the program, that there are fellows around the country who really are assuming positions of leadership and opportunity in politics and law and business. And as they continue to grow, to track them, to watch them have those opportunities to be leading virtuously, and then relying back in on the network to hopefully be hiring people up into their organizations, or getting references for different sort of opportunities. The thicker and more connections that we can continue to make on this really has that multiplying power. So that's what we're hoping to continue to weave all that together.
No, it's been really exciting to see it, from its early days, and just I look forward to seeing where you take it, Mitch. So sadly, we're at an end of time here for this installment on the Apostolate Spotlight. But thank you, Mitch, for helping us understand Leonine a little better, and hopefully you'll come back on some other topics as we go along.
Yeah, and thanks for this opportunity. I mean, we're just so happy to have this opportunity between the CIC and the Leonine Forum to work with the Napa Institute. I mean, really admire everything that you're doing with the organization, and the opportunity to really be an apostolate for apostolates, I think, is a very important thing for the church right now. So thanks for all you're doing.
Well, thank you, Mitch.
Great.
We are very short-sighted at times when we give in to self-centered ideas of leadership in the future. Those rising leaders among us have a profound call, and established leaders in the church and lay apostolates are well served to recognize that and to lean into this reality. We should ask ourselves, what can we do today to help tomorrow's leaders see what they are made to do for the church and for the world? St. John Paul II famously loved to nurture the promise of the younger generations. In an address to one such group, he said, "Your lives cannot be lived in isolation, and even in deciding your future, you must always keep in mind your responsibility as Christians towards others. There's no place in your lives for apathy or indifference to the world around you. There's no place in the church for selfishness. You must show a conscientious concern that the standards of society fit the plan of God. Christ counts on you, so that the effects of His Holy Spirit may radiate from you to others, and in that way permeate every aspect of the public and private sector of national life. To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. Do not let the sight of the world in turmoil shake your confidence in Jesus. Remember His words. Be brave. I have conquered the world. Let no temptation discourage you. Let no failure hold you down. There is nothing that you cannot master with the help of the one who gives you strength." End of quote. May we all be brave, just as St. John Paul II was, in trusting God's power to draw up young men and women to continually build up the church in the world. He will never fail us, and will raise up those meant for the moment we are given. Thanks again for joining us today. For more information about how the Napa Institute is forming leaders to reform the church and transform the culture, head to napa-institute.org. May God bless you this day and always.